I just want to thank you for your time and for the ways that you have weaved wisdom into your book and how you have taught so many congregations like Westminster about generosity and how it really enhances our relationships with one another as the body of Christ, but draws us, more importantly, to our loving Creator. So before I ask you a few questions, could you just tell us about yourself and your faith story?
Sure, happy to. So I grew up in the church. I don't really know a time that I didn't. Both UCC and then Lutheran in Marietta, Georgia. My faith became real when I had successfully avoided it for several years, but I ended up at summer camp. I don't know how my mom pulled it off, but she got me on the bus. And I was at summer camp, and that was really the place where my faith became real, as counselors shared their faith and just encouraged that deeper conversation. I went on to be a volunteer there. I went on to be a summer counselor, became an interim program director. As a counselor, the kids look at you and they expect you to tell them something about God. And so I had to figure it out. And that was just a very formative time for me. My call to ministry came there. I met my wife there. And so it's really kind of in that atmosphere where my faith took off and actually my life of service to the church really took hold.
Well, thank you for sharing. It sounds like you've had a lifetime of experiences and stories, not just what you've written about. So
Sure.
You might have to write another book, Mike.
We'll see if that happens. I wrote this one traveling across the country on airplanes and late at night in hotel rooms, and I don't travel quite as much anymore. So we'll see. We'll see when the next one gets done.
Well, tell us what led you to work with GSB Fundraising.
So, well, I was a client, but even before that, the same camps where my call to ministry came, I was in my first call, and the camp pulled together a pastor's advisory cabinet, which I served on. And Dave Brunko, he's the B in GSB, was the consultant working with that. And all of a sudden, I got hired by the camp, and I learned it was his fault. But I became the development director at the camps, which was truly a passion for me to raise money for them. And he was my consultant. And he and I became friends. What I really liked was the passion that he brought for the success of his clients, how he worked harder than I expected a consultant to do so. And I saw the calling in him to do that type of work. I started consulting honestly as a hobby. I wanted to stay at the camps. Camps don't pay that well. My son had some special needs. I needed to get him into a private school, and it was really by moonlighting as a consultant that I was able to provide that opportunity for him. And all of a sudden, that hobby took over, and I really love the ability to work with more than just a single organization. As much as I love that organization, they're a client now, but I had the ability to work across denominations, across congregations, camps, social service agencies, and it just honestly, it felt like a calling that God was leading me to. So
Definitely sounds like it. I would confirm that, and I'm sure many other people have confirmed it along the way.
Those that don't want to talk about money and think I'm ruining their life because of it.
Well, you share different perspective. I mean, the way you talk about the consultant who influenced you, I believe you're sharing that same influence, that passion, that different perspective on money with the congregations that you serve. And we're grateful for you, but we're very grateful for Mitzi as well, that you all work as a team.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
One of the questions that came from our Sunday school class was some of the statistics, the numbers. And one of the numbers that they had a question on was the 0.62% of Christians that give to the church. And they just wanted a little clarification. I'm not sure we did not look up the study where this was quoted, so we could have done our own research.
That's right. It's in a book up on the shelf over there.
But the clarification is, when we hear Christian, is that someone who claims Christian on paper, like in a survey, or is that a Christian who claims that they believe and they live and serve their faith out in the world and through the church?
So it was a sociological study of giving. The book was Passing the Plate, and it's getting a little old now. I think the statistics are still relatively true. And it was a combination, that study, as best as I know, the research behind the study, it was both from people's proclamation on their tax records, as they would do that, as well as independent studies, sitting down with people. And I believe it's American Protestants. I believe that the Catholic number is separate. I believe that the Latter-day Saints number is separate. I think it is just Protestant Americans. And this is something, this gets people's attention, right? Because we've often heard that the average Christian gives 2%, and that's pretty close, I think. And I think they back that up in their study as well. But you have people like Virginia, who was one of my generosity mentors, who was giving 35% of her income away. So percentages can be skewed a little high. Median Protestant giving 0.62% of their income. You line us all up, smallest to largest, the median's the one in the middle. That person is giving 0.62% of their income away. So yeah, that does get a lot of people's attention, right?
Yes.
I think there's a number of reasons for that. The study is really interesting, as they give about 10 or so different ideas as to why. And so my feelings about this are highly influenced by them. So like, don't think I'm just making this up, but it's clarified kind of by my experiences as well. We don't talk about money that often. Like in many Protestant congregations, money is a taboo topic. I have heard pastors say that during their interviews with a congregation, they're told, you don't talk about money here, or, you shouldn't come, and that kind of thing. Like, I mean, I'd never served that church, but like I've heard there are places where that is spoken. So if we don't talk about it, it's obviously not important, right? And if we don't talk about it, how do you learn generosity? So something I'll often do is I'll ask a group of people, where'd you learn generosity? Every time, 90 to 95% of the people will say, I learned in the home, right? Either my parents or my grandparents or aunts and uncles. Well, if the majority of people are giving less than 1%, who are you learning from, right? Great people, but they may not really know generosity the way some people know generosity. And so if we don't ever talk about it, how do you learn from generous people, right? I think too, in congregations, we often direct our messaging to the top 20 donors in the congregation, right? Tend to be people giving $100 a week or more. That's kind of who we do, because we'll say things like, hey, if everybody would just grow by 10%, and if you're giving $100 a week, all of a sudden that's $110 a week. That $10 is over $500 a year. That really adds up to be meaningful and different. If you're only giving $100 a year, your 10% is $10 over the course of the year. People might do it, but it doesn't really show up, and people are left feeling like, does my gift matter, right? And so we don't talk to people who are in that giving situation in a way that their gift makes a difference sometimes. Or how do you go from, we hear about tithing, 10% or more. And if I'm currently giving less than 1% and I review my budget, there's just no way, right? And if we don't talk about a generosity journey, or how do we move from here to there and not feel like we're a failure? And because I know I've started and stopped and messed up and missed a goal, and how do we get back up and try again? If nobody tells us it's okay to mess up and it's okay to fail, but the idea is the journey. Just recently, I had a young adult tell me, as we were kind of talking about annual stewardship, and he said, if you were to ask me to give an extra $1,000 next year, I'd laugh at you. And not only would I laugh at you, I would ignore you. Like, I mean, he was just pretty honest. He said, but if you ask me for $20 a week, I can do that. Like, and so how we ask matters. And so if we tell people, oh, we've got a $500,000 budget, we need a $500,000 next year. Well, I'm going to look at you and say, well, I don't have that. I mean, I can't help. But if you ask me for $20 a week, I might write you an $80 a month check, but I can wrap my head around that. And so we've got to begin getting, I think, the generosity witness out there. I think some people just don't know what it looks like. They just don't get it. My daughter's 25. She asked me the other day, now does the church's whole budget come from the gifts of the members? Yeah, like, I think maybe I missed something. Maybe we need some continued dialogue, even though you're 25, you know? So again, we've got to help people. And then the work you've been doing with Mitzi, I know she's talked to you about storytelling. Like, I know she's talked about telling your story. You know, sometimes the church's story is we don't tell our best one, right? Help us balance the budget, help us pay the electric bill. And I've met a lot of people that they don't like paying their own electric bill, let alone, you know, somebody else's. So, you know, let's talk about the difference that it makes that we can worship together, the difference that our faith formation activities are happening, the difference that the grieving person is able to be in a supportive community and get to some healing. That's what people want to give to. And so just got to work on our messaging. So, and I find people are excited to be generous when we reach them where they are, when we teach them how to do it, what it looks like, and then teach them that, you know what, your dollar a day will make a huge impact on what our growth goal is next year. I met a bunch of churches that if everybody would grow by $1 a day, they'd do great. Now we know not everybody will, so we don't just tell everybody to do it that way. But, you know, and anyway, so I rambled, but it was fun.
Well, you light up when you talk about generosity. So that's wonderful. Not everyone does.
Yeah.
Well, I was wondering, our theme for our stewardship series is faithful generosity. Yeah. I know GSB encourages all of us to have 3 initiatives, which we have chosen those, and we have talked about those over the last 3 weeks. And so this Sunday is our kind of commitment, our closing, and then we look forward to celebrating all that God has done and will do at Westminster. So I wonder if where you have witnessed faithful generosity in your life or in the life of your church, or, you know, if there's a story that comes to mind that would relate to the theme that we're trying to live out this year.
Yeah, how much time do we have for this? So, you know, when I was in seminary, the congregation I grew up in paid my tuition. When I came home for Thanksgiving, my undergraduate advisor would slip me $100 so I could actually go out to eat while I was in seminary. I mean, plenty of personal benefit stories like that. But the one that I haven't told this one in a while, but it's huge. That camp I mentioned, their call to ministry came, faith came together, met my spouse, called to ministry. The reason that place is there is because 8 families mortgaged their homes in order to purchase the property for a camp in North Carolina. Wow. I don't know that I've ever heard of that commitment since then, but the whole reason I'm here in front of you today is because 8 families had the trust and the faith that God was calling something big to happen at this camp. And they mortgaged their homes in order to make the payment to make it happen. I'd say that's a pretty good one.
That's an amazing one.
And so, you know, we say all the time, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and there's 8 families that are the giants that I owe my being here with you today too. And I know the stories of so many that have gone to faithful lives of service, faithful lives, you know, full time in the church in their regular careers, becoming leaders, just having a place where they felt cared for. Like that, the ministry that has happened there, because 8 families had the courage and the faith to mortgage their homes in order to be able to provide the payment to purchase what has grown into, I think, a phenomenal place that is making a huge impact. And that's going to be a hard one to top for me, probably.
For many of us, but I'm sure God can do it. If
Oh,
any,
absolutely.
well, I just want to thank you for your time and all that you have shared today. It really just confirms all that has been read over this last month. I finished the book actually today, so this is a nice way to seal it with some excitement and getting to meet you face to face.
Very good. Very good. I'm so glad y'all are reading it, and we could have the chance to talk. And as you can tell, I enjoy talking, so we can do this again sometime if we need to.